Lads, welcome back to Fusion YGO, and today I am bringing you an update to my Despia deck. I love the Dark Lord variant. It's very draw heavy. But I hate losing to Droll and Lockbird, so I decided to update it a little bit, give it a little bit more finesse, and now we're going to tinker. I tinkered with it, I put it in the lab for a little while, and I really like this list. This version has gotten me more wins consistently, and it's not winning off cheese factor, it's winning off of skillful play and interaction. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Starting off with, well, look, this card's expensive, and I'm not gonna pretend like it's not, but 3 copies of Aluber, the Jester of Despia. So, Aluber has 2 really powerful effects. The first effect is when it's normal or special summon, you get to add a branded spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And then if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card's in the graveyard, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls. You get to special summon it and negate that monster's effects. It's huge, powerfully useful. It is a Despia name, so it works in tandem with some of the other cards. The Despia package itself is actually not super big, but they all work really, really well, especially off of the fusions. The next up is 3 copies of Despian Tragedy. Tragedy is crazy. So if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, so that's like fusion summoning or off of a card that's coming later, you're able to add a Despia monster from your deck to your hand, except itself. And then you can banish this card from the graveyard to target a branded spell or trap in your graveyard and set it to your field. It's a hard once per turn on either effect, and you can only use one of the effects. So Despian Tragedy is super useful. You can even get this off of things like 1-for-1, which can start you off if you decide to play it. I'm not playing it here, but it is an option that I did want to make sure it was known. We got 2 copies of Dramaturge of Despia. Dramaturge is really good. When it's used as fusion material, you're able to special summon it from the graveyard. And then if a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster is special summoned, except during the damage step, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So it's just really good spot effect negation. And it's a big boy. It's 3,000 attack points, so it's nothing to scoff at. And it's a level 8. So all of that is super important, and we will get into why in the extra deck. Next up is Add Libton. We only play 1. Add Libton is mostly here because he is a Despia name. But when it's used as fusion material, you can target a Despia monster in your graveyard and special summon it. And then during the main phase, if it's on the field, which I've never actually had it on the field, but if you ever do get the opportunity where it's on the field, you can have monsters gain attack equal to their level times 100. Like I said, it's never come up. It's never been a card that I've used that way. It's always been fusion material. But it is another Despia name. It gives you 9 targets in the main deck for Despia names, which is incredibly important. We're running 3 copies of the field spell, which is essentially just polymerization. It is searchable off of Aluber because it is a branded card, but Despia Theater of the Branded is your fusion spell. And then there's it has a second effect that you can recur fusion monsters from the graveyard. So pretty big. We've got 3 copies of Branded Opening. Branded Opening is really, really powerful. So the first effect is by discarding card, you can also target a Despia monster. You take a Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position. For the rest of the turn, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. And if a fusion monster you control would be destroyed by battle or by a card effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. So you can only use one of the effects per turn, but this card discards as part of the effect, not as cost, so it triggers Despian Tragedy. So it can be really good in that instance to be able to set 1, keeping the Despian Tragedy in your hand, and you can search you can special summon during your opponent's turn an Aluber, which can get you another branded card, and set up your field for defensive plays. 2 copies of Branded in Red. Branded in Red is a targeted a Despia monster or a Fallen of Albask in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and then immediately perform the following. You get to fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck, by banishing fusion materials listed on it, by banishing materials from your hand or field, and it cannot attack directly this turn. Branded in red is crazy good. Being able to be a quick play polymerization, it's always good to have extras of. Speaking of the Fallen of Albaz, we actually are running a single copy of Fallen of Albaz. It is here because if it is normal or special summoned except during the damage step, you can discard a card and fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters on either field as fusion material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material. So you have to fusion with your opponent's stuff. It gives you a searchable polymerization, and it's highly recurrable in the deck based on things that are in the extra deck and such. So Fallen of Albaz, I run it at 1. When Branded Fusion comes out, I will up that to 2, and I think everybody pretty much will. Next up is 2 copies of Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous. Ecclesia lets you search out one of your 3 copies of Dogmatica Punishment. It is here to give you a better going first board and ways to interrupt your opponent during their turn a little bit more efficiently than just making them pay a buttload of life points. But you have to be smart about it, and you can't special summon from the extra deck the turn you use that effect. The cool thing is we're not playing Nadir Servant, so we're actually able to continue our extra deck plays the way we want to, which is really nice. 2 copies of Edge of Chain. Edge of Chain allows you to search one of your 3 copies of Fright for Patchwork, which gives you access to one of your 2 copies of Polymerization. So what this engine does, which is really big, and I'll show off all 3 here. So Edge of Chain searches you Fright for Patchwork. Fright for Patchwork will search you a Polymerization and an Edge of Chain, and using Polymerization, you can fuse with your Edge of Chain to be able to continue your cycling through. So it helps you deck thin by multiple cards, which is always really good. 1 Fright for Patchwork in your opening hand can lead you to the point where you have pulled 3 cards out of your deck, which is really nice. That starts you from 35 to 32 in a very short, easy to do turn, and it's just really big that way. 3 copies of Effect Veiler. It's one of the best hand traps of the current format. It also has double synergy with this deck because it's a light. We have 2 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being. Nibiru is, again, double purpose. It's, it's big, and it works really well because we are able to deal with the token in a different way, which we'll get to in a minute. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. It's another great hand trap. It gives you a little bit more back row disruption, and it's good going second. This gives you going second options, as well as finally 2 copies of Super Polymerization. This is how we get rid of that token, because all of the monsters we're about to go into in the extra deck require a light monster, and this just lets you fuse with your opponent's stuff. Let's move on to the extra deck. All right, on to the extra deck. We've got 3 copies of Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon. I love this card. So it requires a light monster, a Despia, and a light or dark monster. While you control this fusion summon card, your opponent must pay 600 life points to activate cards or effects. If your opponent controls a ritual, fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster while this card is in your graveyard as a quick effect, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon once per turn. So Masquerade if you can get 2 of these out, your opponent to do anything has to pay 1,200 life points. And that can actually be pretty crazy, especially if you back that up with a Dramaturge and a Dogmatica Punishment. You can actually end with some pretty crazy stuff. Next up is 2 copies of Despian Quarities. Quarities allows you, during the main phase, as a quick effect, you can change the attack of all monsters currently on the field to 0, except until the end of this turn, except level 8 or higher fusion monsters. And if this face-up card leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Fallen of Albaz or 1 Despia monster from your deck. So this just gives you other things. So like this is one of the cards that you'll want to keep on the field alongside Masquerade. This card's really good, but losing it doesn't really matter because you're able to get free Fallen of Albaz, which can fusion summon, or a free Despia monster to keep things on the field and to keep your plays rolling. 1 copy of Despian Proskenion. Proskenion, during the main phase as a quick effect, you can target a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster in your opponent's graveyard. Banish it or special summon it to your field. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of that attack or defense, whichever is higher. And you can only use that once per turn. So this card works really well if you use Proskenion to make it, or Quarites to make it. You can go Quarites, drop everything to 0, become Proskenion, punch something that was once really big, now it's really little, and now you've dealt them 3,200 plus whatever. So it's crazy how good this card is and how well it works. Next up is going to be Albion, the Branded Dragon, I'm sorry. It requires a Fallen of Albaz and a light monster. If this card is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon one level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except itself, by banishing the materials listed on the card from the graveyard. So you can use Fallen of Albaz and one of your opponent's light monsters. You can make Albion the Branded Dragon, and then you can immediately use your Branded Dragon and Fallen of Albaz by banishing it to make one of the cards, the very next card, actually. And then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can set a branded spell or trap directly from your deck to the field. So this can give you access to Branded in Red, or Branded Opening, or even Despia Theater of the Branded, which can freely start off your plays for the next turn and help you out. That effect does trigger off of Dogmatic of Punishment, so that's always really nice. So you can pop a 2500 beat stick as well. But you can turn Fallen of Albaz into a 2-card interruption, because what you'll do is you'll fusion summon with their light monster, you'll make this, then you'll fusion summon it away by banishing this and your Fallen of Albaz, and you make Borreload Furious Dragon. And Borreload Furious Dragon is another interruption. This card is just a flex pick. You have a lot of flex spots in here for fusion choices, but this card's just really good, and it's big, so that's always nice. The next thing you want to go for is Brigan, the Glory Dragon. Brigan is pretty good. So it can't be destroyed by battle, but you control this fusion summon card. Your opponent cannot target other monsters you control with monster effects. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon a Tri-Brigade monster or a Fallen of Albaz from your deck. So a lot of these get Fallen of Albaz out, which is pretty cool. Then we've got one copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. It's just to deal with dark monsters. One copy of the first Dark Lord. It's just a big target. You can make this, but it's pretty rare anymore because we've cut the fairy package down to 9 monsters. So you won't often make this, but you can use this for Dogmatic of Punishment to, punish your opponent. Next up is one copy of Wind Pegasus Adagnister. This is another card that is strictly there for Dogmatic of Punishment. This gives you Dogmatic of Punishment, potentially 2 interruptions. Because what you'll do is you'll pop this off of Dogmatic of Punishment, pop something with 2300 or less, and then you could shuffle another card back into the deck. One copy of Dingirsu. You have a lot of level 8s. Sometimes you just don't have ways to deal with big boys. This is a great way to deal with big boys. Just yeet it out of existence. One copy of Predaplant Verde Anaconda. This is just here as another way to get super poly, like if you need it in a weird game state. I have this in the extra deck and I don't think I've ever used it. The last card, this card has come up a couple of times, but it's pretty rare. Like you can substitute out these last 2 cards for a lot of different things. You can put in more targets for Dogmatic of Punishment if you want. Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. You have a lot of big boys. You can freely make this, and then your opponent just goes, oh, well that sucks. Game 2. Because this card is just hard to deal with if you make it with a level 8. All right, into the side deck. The side deck is pretty linear. It's a lot of things to help you go first with like better trap cards if you know you're going first to get rid of like Nibiru, or if you're going second and has some power cards there too. So starting out is 3 copies of Side-Frame Gear Gamma and 1 copy of Driver. It's a light, it blows something up, and negates effects. It's just good. We got 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Rabbit is just another way to pop cards on the field. It's a good going second option. Against decks that don't do a lot of summoning, this can be a good replacement for Nibiru, as it doesn't hurt your strategy and it pops cards. We got 2 copies of Witch's Strike. This is just to be a nuisance. That's really it. If you get Solemn Striked or Solemn Judgmented, you could use this card to like just nuke your opponent's hand and field, and it's really funny. Doesn't come up a lot, but when it does come up, it makes you feel really powerful. 2 copies of Lost Wind, more interruptions. It's 4 more copies of Infinite Impermanence. 2 Heavy Storm Duster just to deal with back row. You could put in other things. It could be Twin Twisters, it could be Cosmic Cyclones, it could be Harpy's Feather Duster, it could be Lightning Storms. I chose Heavy Storm Duster because it's fun and it lets me set the field. And going against control decks, if I go first, I can use this to clear out their back row during their end phase in a really detrimental way without having to discard any resources. And last is 3 copies of Dark Ruler no more, literally just to break boards. And that is going to do it for the Despia deck profile. I have worked a little while on this deck. I really enjoy it. It's super fun. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. Comment if you have any suggestions on things that maybe I overlooked or maybe I missed, or cards and things that I may not have thought of. But I really enjoy this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. We look forward to seeing you soon. Until next time, lads, good fun. Have luck.